Hey, CrossFitters, welcome back. It's Coach Bob here, CrossFit Glen Burnie, and today we're going to look at the second macronutrient, the fat metabolism, and the effect of exercise on fat metabolism. Now, a fancy word for fat is lipid. So today we're going to be looking at a lot of what is currently known about the metabolism of lipids and how that relates to our exercise. So come with me. We're going to learn together as we go through the latest on fat metabolism and exercise. All right, so we're just going to go through the article that I have here. This is the latest research on exercise and the regulation of lipid metabolism or fat metabolism. So let me make this a little bit bigger so we can see the words here. The abstract is usually has a very small font, so it'll get a little better here as we go along. So basically the primary fuel source that your body uses whenever you're at rest, not exercising, is going to be fats. It's just, plenty available for our body, and our body can use that as a way of just sustaining life, and it's the preferred fuel source for our bodies when we're not exercising. Exercise intensity is the primary factor that dictates what your body is going to select with fuel during exercise. Now, we already talked about carbohydrates and how the body loves to use carbohydrates during high intensity exercises. It turns out that with our intensity of our exercises, that the body is going to start with the primary preference of lipids with the lower intensity and even moderate level of intensity exercises. And then that switches over to more and more carbohydrates or glycogen, stored glycogen as the primary fuel source. Number 3 here, as the intensity increases beyond 45 to 65% of your VO2 max, glycogen and glucose become the primary fuels. That's what we just said. Whereas fat utilization or lipid utilization starts to decrease. Let's see here. Going on to what we got next. So substrate preference during exercise varies with intensity. So substrate is just a fancy way of saying, when we eat food, our body lays down these energy sources, and it has it can lay it down as stored muscle glycogen or glycogen in the liver. It can lay it down as stored fat in what they call adipose tissue. It can also store it as intermuscular triglycerides, so stored fat that's very close to the working muscles. It can lay it down as protein as well in the body and build up protein in the body. So anyway, substrate preference during exercise varies with intensity. We talked about that. During exercise and as a result of some studies they've done, the muscle, and this really isn't going to be surprising to anyone, muscle accounts for about 55 to 75% of your whole body fat utilization during the submaximal exercises. So most of the exercises that we do, our muscles accounts for a large percentage of the fat utilization. So if you think of like fat burning, your muscles are burning the fat by and large. Peak fat utilization is achieved during moderate intensity exercises. So they're basically saying, if you have very low intensity, or you're at rest, or very low intensity, or even the very highest intensity, the fat utilization is going to drop off. The peak utilization is really in that moderate zone, and that moderate zone is roughly around 65%. So if you think of like CrossFit workouts that we do, the ones that are the threshold workouts, all the threshold workouts are going to be really in and around this moderate intensity that's going to provide the peak fat utilization in the body. right? Sprint workouts, interval workouts, those are the highest intensity. That's going to prioritize muscle glycogen, and basically the stored carbohydrates in the body. A very slow, long distance workout, like a 40-minute kind of a threshold workout. It will still be somewhat moderate. It's going to be a little bit lower intensity. But so I would say that probably primarily a large percentage. If I just made a guess, I'd probably say about 60% of the workouts that we do are going to be in and around that moderate level of intensity. So we're maximizing or having peak fat utilization during those exercises. Let's see. Oh, after exercise. And let's talk a little bit about what happens after exercise. We went to the gym, we did our CrossFit workouts, and we are now on our way home, and we can kind of look at everything that happens from that point on for the next 24 hours. So the resultant increase in your plasma or blood fatty acid concentration can last for 12 to 24 hours after exercise. So when you exercise, your body really floods your plasma, your blood, with fatty acids as its primary way of getting fuel to the working muscles. It can also get this from the intermuscular triglycerides. And the body really kind of goes, I wouldn't say overboard, but it provides a lot more fatty acids than what you could ever use in the exercise. So the resultant increase in that plasma fatty acid concentration can last up to 12 to 24 hours after exercise. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. These changes are positively associated with the energy expenditure during exercise, suggesting that the post-exercise increase in circulating fatty acids is greatest in response to exercise where high energy demand is incurred. So we're not just talking about, walking for 10 minutes on the treadmill. This is a workout that we felt like that was a good workout. I worked hard. I was at threshold for a significant portion of that workout. And now that high energy demand is going to play out as a lot of circulating fatty acid in our blood. Dietary factors certainly impact the restoration of those intramuscular energy reserves. So like I said, we could have that fatty acid coming from the adipose tissue. We can also derive a lot of that. Well, a significant portion of that can also come from the intramuscular triglyceride pools. And I said a significant amount of it. It's there's like only 1 or 2% of it really is coming from the intramuscular triglyceride pools, yet it's so near the muscle. And like I said, the body really just kind of goes in and provides a lot of these fatty acids. So even a small percentage of the fat can really provide a lot of energy in our exercises. I think that's the way to read that. Let's look at the next, let's go on. We'll talk more about it. Excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. So you may have heard of EPOC. EPOC is that benefit after the workout where your body is going to continue to require more oxygen because it's doing some stuff to recover. And there's a lot of theories about what is actually driving that need for extra oxygen consumption hours, day after your exercise. So the most consistent and dynamic modulator of the EPOC is exercise intensity. So as the vast majority of literature indicates, the heightened exercise intensity not only increases the magnitude of the EPOC, but also can extend the duration. And so a lot of the theory that's presented here is talking about how it's probably related to that excess fatty acid that is provided into the blood that can be sustained for 12 to 24 hours. And then the body going through and putting all of that excess fatty acid back as adipose. I think it's putting it back well, putting it back wherever it puts it, right? It could probably select to put it back in intramuscular triglycerides, or perhaps place it back into adipose tissue. So it takes energy to do that, and that's where that excess oxygen looks like it really is coming from. So increased intensity really kind of increases the magnitude and the duration of that epoch. So if if you think of epoch, you're like, oh, that's beneficial, right? Because I worked hard. Now, I have that elevated excess post oxygen. So, if you do believe that that's favorable, then you would probably want to think about exercise intensity and the magnet for increasing that overall. However, it appears that a portion of the lipid metabolism that's sacrificed during that exercise intensity is what's being recovered. So it may just be a phase that we go through after exercise. All right, let's talk about some dietary factors influencing exercise fat metabolism, because it actually turns out that they make a fairly big point on our nutrition and how that is either supporting or not supporting the fat metabolism that's going on during our exercise. So you really have to have both working together, both your activities as well as nutrition that supports it, right? And so I think this is something that a lot of people aren't talking about out in the media that I think we need to know so that we can make the best selection on our nutrition to best support our exercise. So let's get into it. So you may have heard of carb loading, and this is back from 1939. They do talk about that a little bit. While carbohydrate loading has been frequently shown to improve performance of endurance exercise lasting greater than 90 minutes, this dietary practice is minimally effective in altering the performance during either moderate intensity exercise lasting 60 to 90 minutes or high intensity exercise. So what does this mean for CrossFit? You shouldn't be carb loading for your CrossFit workouts. It's counterproductive. And they also go on to say that, it doesn't seem to really matter what type of carbohydrate you're consuming, but it does it doesn't really seem to matter. However, there is evidence that indicating that fructose inhibits fat oxidation to a greater extent than glucose during and after exercise. And what beverage has the highest amount of fructose in it? Any beverage that has high fructose corn syrup. I'm almost guaranteeing that to be the fact. So watch out for what you're drinking, because if you're drinking food or drinking beverages that, obviously you're drinking beverages that have a lot of fructose in it, that can really inhibit the fat oxidation. So it kind of undermines your overall goals and your hard work that you're putting in the gym if you're just, drinking a lot of high fructose corn syrup. Let's see. We got something here. It's kind of interesting because now they talk about a ketogenic diet. You may have heard of this. This is a low carbohydrate and a high fat diet. And, in humans consuming fat-rich or lipid-enriched diets for as little as 3 to 5 days or up to 4 to 7 weeks, so in that range, exhibited greater whole body fat oxidation during exercise than individuals consuming a carbohydrate-rich diet. So the composition of the food that you eat, if it's all carbohydrates kind of a thing and very low protein, very low fat, you're not going to see this benefit, right? It's going to be an uphill climb, a very steep uphill climb. If instead your diet includes a higher level of fat, or it does, mindfully think about the kinds of macronutrients you're getting, the fat, the carbohydrates, and the protein together, then you're going to likely see a greater whole body fat oxidation during exercise. So we're going to burn more fat is basically what it's saying. Well, I'm just seeing here. Indeed, several studies indicate that acute provision of excess lipids prior to or during exercise results in the use of fatty acids as a primary metabolic fuel, whereas carbohydrate use is slowed. It's important to note that exercise performance in response to the short-term exposure to a ketogenic diet, less than 6 days, often declines. So as people are making that adaptation into fat adapted, they're going to see a maybe an initial decline in the performance, despite substantially enhancing their fat oxidation. So even though they're getting more oxidation in fat, their body really hasn't adapted yet and become fat adapted. So they may see a drop off in performance because their body is still looking for those carbohydrates to fuel their work. There's mounting evidence indicating that a prolonged greater than 4-week consumption of low carbohydrate ketogenic diet not only enhances fat utilization, but can either maintain or go to the next page or improve exercise performance. So there's a lot of good literature out there on that supporting the fact that a fat adapted diet is going to, or a keto adapted diet, or individuals are going to actually see increased performance in their exercises, as well as being able to oxidize more fat in their exercise. So let's think about dietary considerations after the exercise, post-exercise, because I think a lot of people think about one or the other. They're thinking about, their nutrition and how they perform in their exercise, but maybe what we need to also be thinking about is how our nutrition after our exercise helps us one way or another, right? So, you work on the gym, and a lot of conventional media right now is really preaching about energy balance. So, you go to the gym, you work out, you burn 300 calories or 600 calories. And so you can just go and eat whatever you want because you just burn 300 to 600 calories. So go ahead and have that donut or that soft drink. Well, you want to pay attention to what we've got here next, because your selection of foods is going to greatly affect your next workout. And I'm going to tell you exactly how that works. So exercise training in the fasted state induces metabolic remodeling to increase fat oxidative capacity. Fancy way of just saying, if you didn't eat before you worked out, then you're probably going to have a greater reliance on fatty acids during your workout, regardless of your performance. It might be good performance, might be bad performance. However, these adaptations are abolished whenever a carbohydrate-rich diet is consumed prior to or during exercise. So your goo packs, or your, you decide to carb load beforehand, or you just have that bagel before you work out, or whatever it is, or applesauce, whatever it is. If you're going to have those things prior to your workout, then don't expect to have a higher level of fatty acid oxidative capacity during your workout. You're not going to burn as much fat. Why? Because you just charged up your metabolism with a lot of carbohydrates, and it's cheap energy for your body. It doesn't have to go through all that. It doesn't have to be fat adapted, right? You just gave it a donut. Similarly, increases in whole body fat oxidation that are typically observed 2 hours after completion of a moderate intensity exercise bout are abolished in individuals that consume carbohydrates immediately after the exercise. So if you want to continue to burn fat for 2 hours after completing your moderate intensity exercise, don't go and just eat your donut and your bagel and your cookies right afterwards thinking, hey, I just worked out hard, I deserve to have this, right? You might deserve to have it, but just know that you're not going to have that whole body fat oxidation for that 2-hour bonus window afterwards. It ain't going to happen. These findings indicate that dietary choices not only modulate your substrate utilization during exercise, meaning what your body's going to select, glucose or carbohydrates or fat during exercise, but are also likely to impact your post-exercise metabolism and the molecular adaptations incurred in response to exercise training. So, hey guys, if you want to burn more fat when you exercise, you have to be thinking about your nutrition before, after, during your exercise as well. You can't just do one without the other. It won't happen. Your body will just continue to prefer carbohydrates, and then you'll just kind of complete the cycle by filling it in with the nutrition with the higher carbohydrates. If you want to oxidize more fat, burn more fat during your exercise, then you have to eat accordingly, right? You have to make sure that you're thinking about, mindful about the macronutrients, your carbs, your protein, and the fat that you're consuming with every meal and every snack. Nutritional choices made pre, during, and post-exercise can override some of the training-induced adaptations in gene transcriptions related to substrate metabolism. So you can't reprogram your genes to be fat adapted if your nutrition is not supporting that goal. We have some concluding remarks. Let's see if we're ready to go to those. Yeah, we covered all of that. Okay, so we're gonna go through some concluding remarks. I think there's some good things in here. We need to pay attention to this. So we learned that fat or lipids are the predominant fuel source used to support submaximal endurance exercise. And we also learned that skeletal muscle is the primary consumer of the fats during and immediately after exercise. So muscles are good. They're going to help us to burn more fat. We've always said bigger muscles burn more fat doing nothing. And indeed, simultaneous modulation of several regulatory mechanisms that dictate tissue fatty acid uptake. That's the use of fat, right? So, I mean, you can put it in the bloodstream. If you're not adapted to actually use it, it's just going to get dumped back out again afterwards. It's just going to go back to where it started from. It's not going to burn. Intracellular lipid delivery and the mitochondrial oxidative is required to maximize fat use during exercise. So basically what this is saying is your body will put the fatty acids into your blood, but if you don't have the adaptations, intracellular, mitochondrial, and otherwise, you're just not going to use it during the exercise. So it's just going to go back to where it started from. The importance of the post-exercise period in mediating metabolic adaptation is emphasized by the fact that consumption of carbohydrates either during or immediately after exercise negates the remodeling of the lipid metabolism pathways, right? So you're going to blunt your lipid metabolism if you just are feeding you high octane, high carbohydrate fuel. You need to have a diet that includes your healthy fats, right? That would be a middle of the road approach. Now, ketogenic diet prior to submaximal endurance exercise indicates that keto adaptation can further maximize the lipid handling capacity of skeletal muscles. That basically means that those muscles are going to adapt to preferring fatty acids without impeding performance. Now, it's kind of a longer term, greater than 4-week kind of a thing. This one last note I think is also important for us because you can look at many forms of exercise and they're going to some of them are going to rely more heavily on carbohydrates than fat. So it really comes down to your goals. And as such, one's dietary choices should not be tailored to should be, I'm sorry, I said should not be. They should be tailored to match their specific goals. So real deep reflection on your goals and making sure that your diet supports your goals. And any drastic changes that you're making in your dietary or exercise practices should be carefully considered and implemented with caution. So the main thing, the way we support that with folks at CFGB is providing goal setting sessions or coffee with a coach. And that's a time that we can get together for 15 or 20 minutes. We can really work on our identify your specific goals, and then start to really think about the action plan, the lifestyle changes that we need to make, or nutritional changes that we need to make to support our overall goals. And then if folks need additional help, we can provide additional coaching, whether that's coaching for performance with personal training sessions, or CrossFit group training, and nutritional or lifestyle coaching as well. So thank you guys so much for joining me today on a rather detailed article on using fat during exercise. Take care, and I hope this has been helpful. Peace.